Throughout Beatlemania, the Beatles received tons of fan mail and gifts, so much so that after a certain point, it's almost certain they had employees to help deal with this, although some say Ringo is still personally responding to his fan mail until today.
Mr. Starr, tea and crumpets.
Just set it over there.
Sir, if you'll forgive an old Brit his impertinence, your devotion to your fans is nothing short of remarkable.
Well, Weatherby, they took the time to write me, and I don't care if it takes me another 20 years. I'm going to answer every one of them. Hello, what's this? From Springfield, USA. Gear.
All joking aside, the only way to guarantee a Beatle themselves received your gift was to, well, hand it to them yourself. So on today's episode of Weird Moments in Beatles History, let's talk about the time that George Harrison was gifted a guitar at a press conference, his 1965 Rickenbacker 360-12. So let's take a trip back to 1965, at the height of Beatlemania, smack in the middle of the famous US Stadium tour. The date is August 21st, and on this evening, the Beatles will play a show at Metropolitan Stadium in Minnesota. Before this, though, they attend one of their many run-of-the-mill press conferences before the show. It was more or less a standard press conference, but it did have its share of hilarious Beatle one-liners.
Is the best actor.
I think Ringo is. Ringo.
I think you are.
Oh, no, I think you
No,
are.
you are.
No, it's you. Okay, stick with those lights on.
Oh, we pay a lot of taxes.
We pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah, that's why we pay a lot of taxes.
What is the stock market? How's your stock going? Up or down?
It's going up, I believe.
Your stuff? You never told me you got stuff.
I got your stuff. Oh, it's Melvin, son.
I'd like to ask you all a personal question about your hair. How can you sleep at night with it that long?
How do you sleep with your arms and your legs still attached? Just the same.
Yes?
I got my start playing the drums from you. After I listened to you, I started playing them.
Oh, you'll never get anywhere if you listen to me.
Is that a laser you've got there?
Yes,
This is George from WWW.
At the end of this press conference for WDGY, something happens that hasn't happened before. Two young men walk up to George Harrison and hand him a brand new, shiny guitar. How did this happen? Well, the story begins with B Sharp Music, a popular music store in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Two employees of the store, Ron Butwin and Randy Resnick, are working when another British group, the Remo 4, happened to be in town, and these guys went way back with the Beatles, going back to their Cavern Club days. The story goes that one or more members of the Remo 4 spotted a brand new 1965 Rickenbacker 360-12 in the store and commented how much George Harrison would love it. Ron and Randy find out that the Beatles themselves will be coming to Minneapolis during their tour in August, and they get a crazy idea to actually give George the guitar in question. They run their idea by their manager, hoping it will help promote the store, and he gives them the okay. After lots of phone calls to local radio stations, Ron and Randy secure a rare spot at the Beatles' August 21st press conference. When the day finally arrives, Randy gets the honor of presenting the guitar to George, and Ron plans to hand George the keys to the guitar case. This incredible moment was captured on film by photographer Bill Carlson, and I'm also going to show the video clip in a moment, but just for completion's sake, let's verify what this guitar actually is and what makes it special. So let's do some quick Rickenbacker history. So the guitar on your screen right now is a Rickenbacker 330. This is sort of their base model for this line, and this is their signature color known as Fire Glow. You get all the classic Rickenbacker features. They also make a 12-string version of this guitar, and I'll point out that Rickenbacker's 12-string solution is kinda genius. Every other guitar company seems to extend the headstock to fit all the tuners, but Rickenbacker uses a system where the tuners go in two directions, and the headstocks have these little slots that look almost like a classical guitar. George Harrison said in a 1987 issue of Guitar Player, "I love the sound of it and the brilliant way where the machine heads fit so that even when you're drunk, you can still know what string you're tuning." Nice. Anyhow, like most companies, Rickenbacker offers a so-called deluxe version of this base 330 model called the 360, or in the 12 strings case, the 360-12. Originally, these deluxe features included binding around the body, as well as nicer triangle inlays on the neck. The shape of the guitar remained otherwise unchanged though, and this was a somewhat short-lived iteration that only lasted until 1964 actually. This is what George Harrison's first Rickenbacker 12-string was, and it was one of the first models ever produced in 1963, which is why it looks like this. But Rickenbacker may have thought that this model wasn't deluxe enough, so in 1964 they updated it, radically altering the appearance of the 360. The top is now comfortably contoured and the horns are much rounder. You lose that top binding because of this, but there's binding on the sound hole as well as on the backside of the guitar. Because of these changes though, the original version with the pointier horns became referred to as old style and was a special request moving forward. So returning to our press conference, at this date and time, August 21st, 1965, Harrison owns one Rickenbacker 12-string. It's the old style model that he received in February of 1964, and he'd been playing it ever since. And because Ticket to Ride and Hard Day's Night were both on their set list for this current tour, he still had it with him. This model that George Harrison is about to receive from B-Sharp Music is the new and improved model, so let's watch the moment that it actually happens, and I've added subtitles to help you hear the Beatles' commentary.
Gentlemen, we have a presentation for you before we wrap things up here.
Okay.
I'll let you introduce yourselves, gentlemen, and you can take it from there.
I'm Ron Butland from B-Sharp
Music Star. From B-Sharp Music, and
My name is Randy Resnick from B-Sharp.
you're presenting the Beatles what now?
Well, this is a gift, a token to thank them for coming to Minneapolis, mainly for George. It's a 12-string guitar. We understand he doesn't have anything exactly like it. Brand new. I have a case, but I wanted to attract attention, and George saw it before and got a kick out of it. So, through the courtesy of B-Sharp and the city of Minneapolis, I'd like to give George this beautiful guitar here.
That's the best thing they've ever got, that. That's great, man. It's fab. That's marvellous. Well, that's mine. That's mine. It's fab, that. It's great. You got one for me?
I wish we had one for everybody.
Great.
I think it goes without saying that George Harrison was a guitar guy, and this was probably the best gift that he'd ever received so publicly. You can tell by the look on his face that he's genuinely grateful, and if you listen very closely, you can actually hear him say, "You shouldn't have done it." Immediately after receiving it though, we can spot Harrison playing with his new toy backstage. He didn't use it on tour just yet though. That would actually have to wait a few months. However, George went out of his way to show his gratitude. Just a few weeks later, on September 7th, which if you think about it, that was only a week after he got home from the tour, George wrote a thank you letter to Ron Butwin, who showed some quick zoomed-in snippets of it on local Minnesota news a few years back. I don't think the original letter has ever been shown in its entirety, so I've painstakingly recreated it here down to the original NEMS letterhead. It reads, "Dear Ron, I cannot tell you how much I appreciated your generosity in giving me such an expensive guitar when we were in Minneapolis. As you know, I did have the older model, but I'll definitely be using the new one in the future, both for recording sessions and stage appearances. Thank you again. Sincerely, George Harrison." Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Although I do feel a little bit bad for the other guy, Randy. As George said though, he did use this in the studio. "If I Needed Someone" is the song that usually comes to mind, and I believe the first time that he actually used this new guitar on tour was December of 1965, during the somewhat mysterious final 1965 UK tour. While this very short run of shows wasn't documented very well, we can at least see in photos that he definitely played it on stage. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this kind of weird short British tour in December 1965, I have a whole video on the subject and I'll put a link in the description. Harrison then went on to use this new 360-12 all throughout the final year of the Beatles' touring career. He played it in Germany, Japan, and the Philippines, and he also played it on the last American tour, including the very last show at Candlestick Park. Now this is the point in the video where I disappoint everyone and tell you that, like so many other Beatle guitars, this one disappeared as well. It was stolen and is considered yet another lost Beatle guitar. Several years ago though, I scanned this photo from this book, hoping it would help me decipher the serial number. Unfortunately, the resolution just isn't there, and so far our attempts to locate the negatives at the Beatles book photo archives haven't panned out. I will keep you posted though. The last thing I will add, though, is that George did seem to be glad that it was this gift Rickenbacker that was stolen and not his original one. In that same 1987 issue of Guitar Player, when asked about his Rickenbacker 12 strings, Harrison says, Yeah, I got number 2. This friend of mine in England who takes care of guitars, Alan Rogan, just found out that the Rickenbacker 12-string of mine is the second one they made. The first one they gave to some woman. What he's referring to is that his Rickenbacker is the second one the company ever made, hence number 2. The woman he's talking about is Susie Arden, a country musician from the 60s who actually holds the title of being the first Rickenbacker 12-string owner. Harrison goes on to say, I got another one from them with the rounded cutaways, but I'm glad to say that's the one that went missing. I got a lot of stuff stolen or lost, wasn't the original one. So it would seem that he had some sentimental attachment to his original guitar, and he kept it for the rest of his life. I'm happy to say though that this guitar is still owned by the Harrison estate, and it's safely where it belongs. See you next time!